Andrew, right before we went live, I finally saw the video of JJ Redick just losing his mind right around, I think it was like the 7:40 mark of the third quarter. It was really the only time that JJ had to absolutely melt down tonight after an absolutely catastrophic performance in game one that I broke down over on the YouTube channel, broke down the defensive structures, everything that went wrong in that game for the Lakers on that end. It was great to see the Lakers come out with a real defensive intensity in that game and showcase what I thought they were capable of from multiple different avenues in this series in terms of being able to slow down Minnesota. This was actually Minnesota's fewest points of their season this entire year, which is kind of crazy. So the Lakers win 94-85. And look, it was a 9-point win, but it was basically double figures from the time that what I would say 4 minutes into this game, 5 minutes into this game, and it never really got closer.
Well, first off, hi, Sam. How are you? It's good to be here on Game Theory. I am excited to talk about literally anything but how the Knicks are using Karl Anthony Towns at the moment. And It was funny to watch Karl Anthony Towns' old team do what they did in game one. And everything looks like it's working perfectly. And you did a good job with the film breakdown earlier today of how they took advantage of a really poor effort from the Lakers defensively. And from the jump, they just did a complete 180, it seemed. And I don't know how much of a 38% shooting night you want to give the Lakers defense credit for, but it deserves some credit, at least in really imposing their will and forcing Minnesota to have one of their worst offensive nights of the season. And now we have a series, Sam.
So I don't know how much I want to give them. I definitely want to give them credit. I don't know how sustainable 38% is necessarily. Like, I would expect Minnesota to shoot better on some level next game. But the thing that I do think is sustainable is the Lakers' effort. And I actually want to call out LeBron James, a player that in general this season has been a roller coaster, maybe in terms of defensive engagement, just because of the age, right? Like, it's not a negative. It's just what he has to do at this stage of his career to kind of stay fresh. I thought he very clearly came out and wanted to set the tone for them in terms of the defensive effort, particularly at the point of attack, that it was going to require against Minnesota. The other thing that they did in this game going into this series, when Bryce and I did series previews and everything, we talked a lot about, hey, let's take the ball out of Anthony Edwards' hands. Let's put two on the ball. Let's make him a playmaker. Let's make him hit short rolls consistently. Let's make him be a passer and make him be the decision maker, something that he's not great at throughout the course of his career to this point. They came out in the first quarter and immediately did that. And for whatever reason in game one, they decided, okay, we're going to switch everything. We're not going to send a lot of second help or anything like that at Ant. I thought that in this game, it showed a lot that, okay, we're going to blitz the ball. We're going to take the ball out of Anthony Edwards' hands. We're going to make life harder for him. And then the Wolves adjusted. They stopped sending screens for Ant. They said, hey, we're going to get you the matchup that you want with some off-ball movement, and then we're going to have you isolate against players. And then the Lakers adjusted to that. They sent kind of some help up from the side in order to force him to the middle where they knew that there were help was, or where the help was in this game. So I thought this was a really fun little defensive chess match throughout the entirety of this game before we even get to the other side, where I thought Chris Finch also did a really interesting job in terms of the defensive chess pieces. But I think that this was a real statement game for the Lakers defensively. And I think it was a statement game for JJ Redick in terms of being able to adjust coming off of that catastrophic game in game one.
And you broke it down, again, just to plug what was on the YouTube channel earlier this morning. Like, you broke it down really well, all the issues that you can't make it so easy for them. The way that game one got away from them toward the end of the second quarter, and really that start of the third, where you could put it up to some shot making, but you also want to make yourself felt on the defensive end. And I don't think the Lakers did a good job really the entire time of how much I was able to watch that game of making their defensive presence known for a Timberwolves team that just took it to him in game one. I felt that way very much so. And even look, the anatomy of a comeback, the anatomy, the script you follow when you're coming back from 21, 22 points, it usually leads to the team that's up with some breakdowns on both sides of the ball. And it's why I want to give, like, whether you want to credit JJ, whether you want to credit LeBron, like the veteran leadership on the team, like every single time the Wolves started to make it close, there was like a stop here, a big bucket here, a like get back in transition and prevent an easy layup here. Like every single time it was like, okay, maybe here's the Wolves making this game interesting. It's down to 15, down to 11, down to 8. And it just, they were able to do enough to on both ends of the floor that they were able to stop the comeback. And we have a 1-1 series as a result.
Yeah, we have a 1-1 series. And on the other end, what we have to talk about with the Lakers is that their offense hasn't really gotten going yet. It did feel like they missed some open threes tonight for sure. They go, what was it, 6 for 29 from 3 in this game. The Wolves go 5 for 25. It was just like a hideous game. The Lakers on the defensive end, they really sold out to stop the 3-point shot. I felt like the Wolves, how do I want to say this? I think I would say that the Lakers were more intentional in attacking certain mismatches that they felt were advantageous. And particularly the one that will get a lot of publicity, I think, after this game was the Rudy Gobert matchup against Luka. Luka, I thought, was more patient and intentional in terms of trying to string Rudy out and bring him away from the rim. And by bringing him away from the rim, not only do you try and be able to just beat him off the bounce, which Luka did a couple of times. Obviously, Austin Reeves did once in the fourth quarter. He's not a fantastic perimeter defender. He's okay for his size, right? But you pull him away from the rim and you give other guys opportunities to cut off of that, or you force the Timberwolves defense to sag in a little bit further in order to protect the rim because Rudy is away from the rim. And then you can find other kickouts in different scenarios as well. So I really, really liked the intentionality, I guess is how I would say this. And this comes down to Luka. You know, again, the Lakers' problem in game one was not that Luka was, you know, they weren't scoring points when Luka was on the court. They had a 110 offensive rating in that game when Luka was on the court. I think that they're fine offensively when he's out there. He's such a special playoff player that it's going to be fine. But in this game, he goes for 31, 12, and 9, goes 9 for 20 from the field, 11, 11 from the line. And you could just see that every single time that he wanted a certain matchup, he was able to find it and he was able to get it.
Yeah. And to your point about him creating for others, like the Lakers go 6 of 29 from 3 tonight. I'd have to go back and look at how many of those attempts were created off of Luka and the offense he was generating. It seemed like a ton, and then just shots not falling. This is no shot at the broadcast whatsoever. I thought they did a fine job, but it was funny to hear them say like, oh, LeBron was working on that 3-pointer all through practice and all through warmups, and he hit one. Ends up being the only one he made tonight, because I actually thought he needed a couple to fall down the stretch to potentially put this game away. But look, to your point about what they are offensively, look, Luka's got 30 plus points in the first 2 games. I believe Taylor Rooks said after the game he's the first Laker to do that, to score 30 points in his first 2 playoff games as a Laker since I forget who.
Shaq.
I think it might be that sounds right. Just saying Shaq is probably the correct answer to a lot of trivia in Laker history. But the way he's generating looks for his teammates, once these shots start falling, maybe he won't have as much of a scoring burden in this series. And through 2 games, they've scored almost identical numbers, which speaks to the defense. That tonight they were better defensively, and 94 points was enough to win, where it was enough to get blown out in game 1. But yeah, I co-signed what Luka was offensively. I would never trade him for anything, any way, shape, or form. Personally.
Well, and I haven't looked at the pace numbers yet. I would guess that this was a slower paced game than game 1, just based off of what it felt like watching the game. It felt like the Lakers would run if they had like real numbers, but for the most part, they would slow it down because I think they do understand that they are a less athletic team than this Minnesota team, and getting into a track meet with Anthony Edwards is not a good idea for them. It will probably go quite poorly, in all honesty. So I would guess that their offensive rating was probably a little bit better in this game than what it was. And I would guess that the big thing for me is that, again, just the ability to close out on shooters led to Minnesota taking 17 fewer threes, which leads to fewer long rebounds, which leads to kind of the game just feeling a little bit slower.
Yeah, I'm looking for the pace numbers now. Shout out to Pivot Fade, so I'll get them for you in a second. The pace to your point seems a little different than it was in game one as well. So can I ask you a specific question about a player? Yeah. I know we're going to eventually go over to the Minnesota side.
Please tell me it's Julius Randle.
Maybe maybe that's the player that when I look at him play for the Timberwolves and how well he's been playing for the Timberwolves, really for the last month and a half since the All-Star break.
Yeah.
Minus 14 doesn't tell me what my eyes thought he played. I thought he played really well, especially with how they were guarding Ant. I thought
he was on the court for the whole first quarter run, and I think he just kind of became a product of that.
And I recognize that's usually how plus minus numbers get skewed. First of all, to your point, the offensive rating for the Lakers tonight was 108, so it's around what it was in game one as well. 97.7 defensive rating. That'll play. The Julius Randle performance, he's gotten a lot of grief in New York for his poor playoff performances, specifically that Hawks series, that Miami Heat series. He was on one leg the entire time, so we give him a little bit of grace. But there were points in this game where all of the Randle takeover stuff that I used to be terrified of, I actually appreciated, because they just needed a second initiator, and he was able to kick out of double teams and get downhill. And one thing he's always been so good at is his gravity forces you to still be able to get offense off his drives. So even though he's not people associate gravity with shooting so much, and with him, because of his ability to get downhill as a battering ram, and he's able to find whoever's open in the corner, whether it be DiVincenzo or McDaniels or Conley or Reed, and it usually leads to open looks. I think if we saw this a little bit in game one as well, but for him to have 27 points on 17 shots tonight, I'm still emotionally invested, Sam, that I want Julius Randle to have good playoff games, and I thought he was really good tonight.
I think he's been awesome in both of the first two games. To be honest with you, I think he's just been really, really good. I mean, in the first game, he ended up with, I'm pulling it up now, he ended up with 16 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. He did have the 7 turnovers, but I thought he played well in that game. He drilled I think it was 4 threes and was super impactful, just with his physicality and his ability to make the right read consistently when the Lakers would help same side. So again, this is now 2 straight games, where Randle has been able to come through and be an impactful, helpful player for Minnesota. And it's been that way, like you said, for the last 2 months. It's basically been that way. He's been really good for them over that time. And it's a credit to him, because this season did not start well. It would have been so easy for him to kind of pack it in a little bit after the way the season started for Minnesota as well. But he didn't. He fought through it. He worked through it. And this is kind of the ideal, I think, of what Minnesota had in mind when they went out and they get Dante and a first round pick to get some more flexibility and to get a little bit more depth to be able to play against teams like this. This was not a great Dante game tonight after a fantastic game one. I didn't think that the Wolves bench played well. Obviously, there will be some stuff about the officiating in this game, but I just kind of thought that Naz Reid's fouls were kind of dumbass fouls, if I'm going to be honest. The moving screen was so terrible for his third foul that Reggie thought was the fourth foul. I just don't. Yes, there was a lot of physicality, and yes, I think that the Lakers probably benefited a little bit more, but also a big piece of what the Lakers were trying to do was specifically keep the ball out of the paint in order to stop that physicality from being able to like render its face at the rim and to put the referee in position to call fouls against Minnesota to send them to the line, such as Anthony Edwards. So I would expect, I guess, the Lakers to be the beneficiary of attack-oriented play when that is what's happening. Now, like, look, we had like multiple calls overturned in favor of the Timberwolves tonight, which is not ideal. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I thought this was a well officiated game. I thought it was pretty poorly officiated, to be honest with you. Wasn't as bad as Knicks Pistons last night, which I thought was like a borderline catastrophe, but it was not great. I still think that like ultimately this was the Lakers defense more than anything that was the reason why they were successful. And this is something I was talking about, I think, with an NBA scout on the phone earlier. Now I'm like trying to remember where we were talking about Janai Broom, honestly. And the thing that NBA officials are letting go right now is any contact through the chest. Like if you just get your chest in front of you, like you see Luka, like literally just put his hands down anytime that he's like somebody's driving into him and he's driving into his chest. You literally see him put his hands down, because I think that officials right now are calling literally anything with hand contact, but they're not really calling anything with like chest contact or like any sort of movement contact that could be called a block. Even if you're like, if you don't necessarily beat the guy to the spot and you're still like kind of getting your chest sort of there, it feels like to me that officials right now are letting that go, but they're not letting like the hand checking and things like that go more than anything. And I think that's more the adjustment I've had to make so far in the playoffs over the course of the last 4 days, I guess.
So they're letting it go unless Jalen Brunson's trying to draw that contact. But you're welcome, America, that I acknowledged the foul baiting and how ridiculous it got last night.
It was bad. It was bad.
I agree. So yeah. It's funny. Me and Bryce, we've kept a dialogue throughout the last week and a half. He's also made some appearances at Knicks Film School, and I went on the Pistons Pulse tonight, and I just said, like, we were frustrated by it too. He wasn't looking to score points by shooting at the rim. He was looking to get to the free throw line, and it felt like that element of the game got in his head. Not the greatest Brunson game, and not compounded with the fact of what's going on with how they're using Karl Anthony Towns, or in this case, not using Karl Anthony Towns. It makes it more frustrating how different it was from this game between the Lakers and the Timberwolves. Look, I didn't see all of Dante's fouls. I got to be honest. His 16 minutes felt very quiet for a Dante DiVincenzo game. The Naz Reid moving screen thing, I'd have to defer to someone that's watched all 82 of his games, but it seems like that's like a thing that he is usually not the greatest at, that he's susceptible to that. But look, this isn't the best indicator of how a game is called, how a game is officiated, but the Lakers end up with more fouls called against them and shooting 5 fewer free throws in this game. So I can't say that it was so one-sided toward the Lakers in this, even if Randle, McDaniels, and Dante and Naz all finish with 4 and 5 fouls across the board. So, yeah, I can't, as much as I agree that last night's game is definitely the poster child for how bad the officiating was. I don't think I can say this is anything close to that, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree with you. But here's my question now. This is 1-1. This is going back to Minnesota. Minnesota has the home court advantage in this series now. Where are you on this series? Because to me, I guess I kind of thought that there was a chance it would be 1-1. Going back to Minnesota, I said 6. I think I said 6. The Lakers in 6 going in, and I might adjust that to 7 based off of what we've seen so far. But does this like kind of change your thought process in any way? Did you like Minnesota going in? Did you, what were your thoughts on this?
I liked Minnesota going in as a respect perspective. Like I liked that how they had played, how they had really launched themselves into the potential for 4 or 3 seed conversation. I had Lakers in 7, and I thought this would be one of those series where we're left going into game 7. Like, I don't know who the better team is, like, especially with how Minnesota's played, how the Lakers have played since the Luka trade. And I think it just comes down to this will be a 3-3 series with game 7 in LA, and one team will have Luka and LeBron and the other won't. It's one of those weird series where I think you might leave this being like, I don't think there's necessarily a loser, even if one team had to lose 4 games. I honestly feel the same way about Nuggets Clippers too, where that could potentially go 7, and I'm left being like, I don't know if there's like a clear better team here. But that also might just be some Jokic love that I'm throwing on there. So yeah, I look at this as a 7-game series. At this point, I'd be shocked if it doesn't go 7. I think this is going to be 2-2 after 4, 3-3 after 6, and it'll set up a pretty classic game 7.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be tight the whole way. Again, this is the thing that Bryce and I said going into this is just like these two teams cause very real problems for one another. Right now, to me, the biggest problems for the Lakers moving forward are that like Jackson Hayes is like totally unplayable right now. Like he's been terrible through the first 2 games. And B, like the offense hasn't really gotten going. You can just say that like the shooting hasn't been there. You expect Dorian Finney-Smith to knock down threes. You expect, Rui Hachimura, although he does have this like facial thing going on now, that he'll probably make some more threes. You'd expect Austin Reeves will not go 0 of 6 from 3 again. Like he had some open looks tonight and just missed shots. Like that's probably not going to happen again. But if you're the Wolves, like, and one thing that did happen tonight is something that Bryce and I talked about, like in terms of the Lakers being able to catch Rudy in switches and play him off the court, because they closed with the Naz Reid at the 5 lineup tonight. And I thought they had a better chance to defend with that lineup, honestly, just especially with the way it was getting called. They were kind of letting Naz Reid be a little bit more physical, I felt like, against Luka. So again, though, that's incumbent upon Naz being able to stay out of foul trouble too.
Yeah.
And not making, bad decisions. So I do think this is a tight series. I do think I would still take the Lakers, but I think more than anything, that's just me thinking that Luka is probably the most complete player in the series in terms of just like the ability to score, but also pass and make decisions in a way that, with Ant tonight, you just didn't quite see it, right? Like Ant ends this game 25 points on 22 field goal attempts, 4 free throws, 2 turnovers, and 0 assists, right? It was just very, very impressive the way that the Lakers were able to bottle them up. I wouldn't expect that that's going to completely, hold up, because Anthony Edwards is a truly special player that is, one of the 10 best players in the league. But I am interested to see where this goes now. I do think I would still take the Lakers to win.
Yeah, they have 2 of the 3 best players. And when I make that calculation that like in the third player is probably LeBron, and it's like LeBron James still. So I trust that math better than anything.
Here's the real question. I think they have 3 of the 4 best players.
So you would put Reeves over Randle?
I still think I would take Reeves over Randle, but the way Randle's playing, it's hard. Because like the thing with Randle is that like when you do run things through him, like what happened tonight, the game naturally becomes more of like Randle ball, which is like slow and methodical, and you don't get as much ball movement. It's, he's going to try and put his shoulder down and drive into you, and then he's going to make a pass, and then you try and get a team into rotation off of that. But it is slower and more methodical, and I think that's a little bit trickier. But again, like I thought Randle's been great in this series. Like he's probably been, frankly, the 3rd best player in the series, even ahead of LeBron.
Yeah.
Right. Like to this point, I just don't know how long that's going to hold necessarily either.
Yeah.
Given his playoff track record at this point.
Either way, whichever math you're doing there with whether he's him or Reeves as your 3rd or 4th best player, the Lakers they have a top end talent advantage. Only thing I'd note before we move on from this series, if they're really going to not be able to play their starting center that much. Like, I agree with you. He looked a little rough tonight, Jackson Hayes. Just the minutes totals. LeBron played 40, Luka played 42, and Austin Reeves played 43. I come from the school of Tom Thibodeau, where that's a December game. But here in the playoffs, you understand there are days off in between in the first round, but you wonder if the team that's able to go 8-9 deep consistently, like Minnesota, just has a little bit fresher legs later on in the series, and whether that can be an advantage for them. We haven't really talked about the Mark Williams aspect of this, but there was a moment when the Timberwolves were making their comeback tonight where I was like, you know what, they could probably use a starting center at the moment.
You know what though? Like, here's the thing: people have made that equivalence, and I'm just telling you right now, like, Mark Williams couldn't play in this series against Anthony Edwards. Like, Ant would just,
so they would just bring him into every action. Okay. Like what the Lakers are doing with Rudy, what you're saying.
Exactly. Like, I don't think Mark would be playable in the series. I think he'd be like better than Jackson Hayes, but he's just not like, I don't think either of them are really all that applicable or useful in this case.
Then what it's more highlighting, and look, they have a long playoff run potentially ahead of them in the Lakers, but what it's more highlighting is how much that's going to be in need for them in the offseason.
Moving forward.
Yeah.
Completely agree with you.